Hey, so I'm playing with a new recording program and I've had lots of problems, and so this is like the 350th time I'm recording this, so excuse me for not being super enthusiastic. First, I wanted to go over this. So the way standard one basing looks, you can have, if you keep SCVs queued up at your command center all the time and never supply block yourself, you can have 21 SCVs at 5 minutes, 25 at 6, really this is 24.9, so you have 24 and one almost finished. 28, which is again 27 with one almost finished, at 7 minutes, 32, which again is 31, at 8 minutes, then 35, then 39, then 43, then 46, then 50, then 53, then 57. And that's all off one command center, just by keeping SCVs queued up, constantly queued up, so that your command center is always popping out SCVs. So a two-base strategy like the Uber Ups build is trying for something a lot more aggressive, where we spend a bigger portion of our kashash on command center, orbital command, bunkers, supply depots, and SCVs. So because of that, we can get out 35 by 8 minutes if we've got our command center done already, and then 42, and then 49, and 56, 63, 70, and then we stop at 72. So usually, even though it's possible to get 49 by 10 minutes, I shoot for about 44 to give myself a little bit of forgiveness of mistakes, or I can sometimes lose some SCVs and still make 44. So you can see 44 relative to 39, not a big change, but it's, you know, by the time you get over to here, you've got 70 instead of 50, and so two basing is a lot bigger of a deal. Also, on one base, once you have 28, you're maxed, your max saturation. So at 7 to 8 minutes, you're done. Like any SCVs you make after 7 to 8 minutes on one base is just like kind of wasted, or you can use them for combat or whatever. Guys, not downstairs, upstairs, please, because I said so. Close the door as well. So because of the way you have to spend more money on your economy, the army size of a two base will tend to be smaller by a reasonable amount. So you can see a standard two base army size will only have 3,000 at 10 minutes instead of 3,500. So Uber Ups is a build that I do all the time, and I sent you a replay in which these benchmarks are taken from, where you shoot for the 24 by 6 minutes and 44 by 10 minutes, right? And your army size, you want 2750. And this means, usually it means about $2,000 worth of Marines, like 40 Marines. And then $750 is accounted for by 1-1 upgrades and 3 bunkers or 4 bunkers or whatever. So the army spending takes into account bunkers and upgrades as well as actual troops. So if you compare the $3,500 you'd get one basing to the $2,750 you get from Uber Ups, you can see that we're a little bit weak here, and 4,200 to 3,100, 5,000 to 3,000. But then right here we catch up. So by 14 minutes we actually have a bigger army, and then by 15 minutes we have a much bigger army. So the reason we're weak down here is because we're spending a big chunk of change on economy, and the reason we catch up over here is because now we've got all the SCVs we're ever going to need, and so we can stop making SCVs, we can stop making supply depots. We've already built all 7 of our racks and all 2 of our starports, and we've started all our upgrades. So we've spent all of our infrastructure money. We never have to spend another penny on infrastructure. So all that money that was part of our monthly budget, or minutely budget going towards infrastructure, that infrastructure budget drops to 0, and now every penny we earn we get to spend on army. So that's why at 14 and 15 minutes we're ahead of the standard build. So these graphs show the SCV count for Uber Ups versus Terran 1 base standard. So Terran 1 base standard is this like straight line. If you have one base and you constantly produce SCVs, this is how many SCVs you'll have at any given time. As you can see, at 8 minutes, when our second command center finally finishes morphing into an orbital, we start to take off from this standard line, and we get more and more ahead of the standard SCV production line. And then over here, again, light blue is the standard army size from one basing. As you can see, throughout the entire game, Uber Ups, which is in dark blue, is going to be lower than the light blue of one basing in army size, because we're spending all this extra money on building an infrastructure that we're going to need later on. And so this is why a lot of people, when they do Uber Ups, they have trouble with a 9-minute or a 10-minute Baneling bust, or even a 12-minute attack, because our army is a lot smaller at 12 minutes than it would have been if we were on one base just focusing only on army. But then when we push out at 14 minutes or 15 minutes, when we're pushing out to secure our third, our army is much bigger than a one base would have had at that point. So we're sacrificing early army in exchange for late army. And so the green, red, and yellow are you from the 3 games you sent me, and you can see SCV production, you were below even the 1 base standard in all 3 games. And you were way below the 2 base standard. You were way below the number of SCVs you wanted to have. So you're off by about 20% from what you wanted to have worker-wise, and then so not surprisingly, you're also off by about 20% as far as your army size goes. So you can see army size from the uber ups is going to be shallow, and then right here at 12 minutes when you've finished all of your infrastructure, it's just going to start to shoot up at a pretty steep angle. And yours was the same general idea, shallow, and then you really started to shoot up at 14 minutes. So you're about 2 minutes behind because of your lack of SCVs. And also, it's important because you secure, at 14 minutes your main starts to run dry a little bit, so you can see it starts to taper off a tiny bit. But if you get your 3rd up and get your 4th up, especially if you take a 3rd as a gold or something and then get a 4th base, then this steep line continues to be very steep for the rest of the game. So the Zerg has a more shallow line or whatever, and you get this big old sexy steep line because you don't have to spend any money on tech or infrastructure from then on. So it's important that you keep your income constantly, you keep those 72 SCVs that you built really quickly, you got to keep them mining. So 72 SCVs need 3 mining bases to be useful, so you always have to have at least 3 active, not mined out bases. So the actual numbers over here, the benchmark for uber ups is 9,000, and in your games you had 7,500, 7,600, and 6,700, so you were always off by like 20% from what you wanted to have, and that's just due to being behind on workers. And I already talked to you about this in email and sent you a link to this and whatever. So I'm going to stop now just in case this isn't recording, because it's so frustrating to say something and then have it not record. Come on, you.